Hi, I'm Melius Weideman from Cape Town, South Africa. I'd like to talk to you about web page or website analytics. These analytics are basically figures that are used to describe the performance of a website. And a possible full definition is that web page analytics is the reporting of the measurement, collection and analysis of internet traffic data. And this is done with optimization in mind. When one knows certain things about the way your website or web pages are used, it allows you to optimize it for better performance. Right, there are many different kinds of analytic measures. I've listed a few here and we'll cover a few of them in this video. There's bounce rate, which is just an indication of how many visitors only visit one page and then exit again as a percentage. There's a number of clicks, which is obvious when you click on a web page, it registers as one click. There's the click-through rate, CTR, which has to do with advertisements, which are currently on the screen. Every time you actually click on an advertisement, expressed as a percentage of the total number of people that viewed the page, gives you the click-through rate, which is typically a very low figure. Engagement time is another one. There's first visits, how many of the visitors have arrived there for the first time. There's a number of hits, which we'll certainly cover. It's a very common analytic. There's impressions, which again come back to advertisements. It's a number of times that an advertisement or a banner is produced on the screen as part of the website. There's page views, and there's also page view duration, which we'll also discover. It's slightly different from hits, and actually more sensible. There's visibility time. There's a number of visitors, and it's got subdivisions, new visitors, unique visitors, repeat visitors, all slightly different. And there's a number of visits or sessions where again there's a number of visits and there's a time or the average time per visit. Together all these things give you a complete picture of the performance and the traffic of a website. The first metric I like to look at is hits, maybe because it's the most common one, but it is one that one should also use with care, and that's why I look at it first. The official definition could be something like it's a number of requests to download a file from a server, a web server. Unfortunately, the definition doesn't really tell us how it's measured, so I'll rather try and do that with an example where the green block is supposedly a web page, and at the top it's got an image of flowers, and then there's some text which welcomes the visitor to the website. Then there's a picture of the owner of the flower store, and there's another picture of a flower. There's some more text being the menu at the bottom, and there's a form which you can fill in and ask for more information. Click on submit and get an answer back. So this is a typical simple web page. But when you type in the address and this web page starts appearing on the screen, the green page with the blue text is the basic file, and that registers one hit. This is an image. Even though it looks like it's part of the file on the screen, it's stored separately on the server, so that image has to be called as a file as well. So that's a second hit. Same for this one and for that one, so that's already 4 hits for one page. And the form, being a separate kind of element, is also loaded separately as a file. So you will get 5 hits for simply viewing this one page. Immediately that should tell you that hits are not a very reliable way of indicating a number of visitors. So the question is the number of hits an indication of popularity? The answer is possibly yes, but it's more an indication of complexity really. The more elements there are on a web page, images in this case, but could be anything else, audio, video files, other programming constructs, every single one of them could be in a different file to be loaded. So a high hit count could be an indication of complexity, which is not always a good thing necessarily. So it begs the question, what is the usefulness? Why bother with hits? The answer is there are some people who have to know about hits. The guys with the white coats and the long hair behind the scenes who manage the servers and the hardware, the number of hits to them is an indication of how hard the server works. If there's 1,000 pictures on a catalog page, for example, and that gets downloaded a few thousand times a day, they might be concerned that the number of hits tell them the server is overloaded and they'll have to do something. So yes, the usefulness of hits is there, but not for the average user in the street. So to summarize then, a low hit count, for example 100 hits per day, could be an indication of a simple web page, which is neither good nor bad, it's just a fact. It could be an indication that the web page is unpopular. It could be that the web page is brand new and the search engines have not found it and nobody visits it. So a low hit count should be taken with a pinch of salt. Similarly, a high hit count, which is theoretically better, like 100,000 hits per day, could mean that the web page is very complex, which could be a bad thing in terms of traffic. It could mean that it is very popular and it actually does receive a large number of hits. But it could also mean that in a large organization where there's 1,000 computers, that web page, the home page of the company, for example, is set to the default. So the moment the 1,000 users switch on their computers every morning, it registers one hit on that web page. It doesn't mean it's a popular or a very good web page. So in summary then, yes, hit counter in general could be useful, but treated with care. It's not on its own a pure indication of popularity of a web page. The next metric or analytic we'd like to look at is page views, abbreviated PV, and the official definition could be something like a download of one basic file from a server. For example, a file called index.html, which is typically the home page of a website. So it sounds like a very similar definition to hits, except that it's slightly narrower. Again, through an example, we'll try and explain that. The green block is one whole website with, say, 3 web pages being part of the website. A user enters at the home page, which is index.html, and it views a page that registers one page view. At the same time, it might register 10 hits. Then he or she clicks and goes to the contact page, which is a separate web page, a different HTML page probably. It'll register a second page view. He or she goes to the flowers.html page and then exits. So in total, there will be 3 page views registered in this process. But at the same time, there could be tens or hundreds or even thousands of hits registered. So a page view is in a way a better indication of a number of visitors over a period for a website. So one page view could be one hit if it's a very simple page with no images or other elements, or it could be many hits, but page view is always equal to or less than the number of hits. So again, like the hits one, a lower value like 10 page views per day is supposed to be bad, and a higher one like 10,000 is supposed to be good. It's an indication of traffic, and obviously in the real world, traffic alone in the commercial world doesn't mean anything. Those traffic visitors must be converted to paying clients to be worth anything. But it's a start. It doesn't mean you're going to make lots of money if you're going to have a page view counter that's high, but it certainly means there's more traffic, and the possibility of converting the traffic into paying clients is there. The next metric we could look at is bounce rate. The official definition being it's a ratio of visitors to a website who leave after viewing only the entry page. Now, by the entry page, we don't necessarily mean the home page. It means whatever page they land on from the outside. So this is expressed as a percentage of the total number of visitors. So in this case, the figures are the other way around compared to the previous ones, where a high percentage is bad and a low percentage is good. Another term that goes with bounce rate is stickiness. The stickiness of a website is an indication of how well it keeps people there. You want people, when they get to a website, to spend time there, to go through various pages and take actions, possibly either buy something or fill in a form or complete some form of registration. You want a high degree of stickiness. In other words, you want a low bounce rate. And 30%, although we can't attach figures to everything, but 30% is supposed to be a break-even point. Above 30 is bad, below 30 is good, but one cannot go only on that. As an example of how it's calculated, again, the green blocks are different web pages on the same website. You have one visitor coming in, he or she only reads a little bit and then leaves straight away. Another visitor visits another page and maybe clicks on a sub-menu, goes to a second page and only then exits. And a third visitor again does a single visit, so-called singleton, and leaves again. So you've got 2 out of 3 bounces, which is a bounce rate of 67%, which according to this is fairly high. Of course, if you have a low number of visits, the bounce rate figure is not reliable, as in this case. Only one more visitor that spends time on 2 or 3 pages will drop that figure to 50% in one go. So bounce rate only makes sense if there's a large number of visitors. The last metric or analytic we can look at is the number of visits or sessions, defined as one or more page views on the same website by the same visitor. In other words, you've got one person visiting one page on a website and then leaving, and then again visiting another page, maybe following a thread and then leaving. That'll count as one visit. Now, with this specific one, there's some element of change because there's a time involved. If I visit a web page today and I exit and I visit it again in 3 years' time, which is a long time in the internet world, does that count as one visit or two? Because it's so long apart. I'm almost a different person by that time. The answer is yes, the time is variable, and some cases people regard 30 minutes as a time between splitting visits, and in many programs this time is adjustable. In other words, if this visit and that one happens within 30 minutes, it's counted as a single visit or a single session. If it's further apart than 30 minutes, then this one and that one will count as separate visits or sessions. In summary, there are many web analytics figures one can use to determine the performance or the traffic surrounding your website. We've seen that you should treat them with care. For example, hits. One shouldn't just look at the number of hits or the figure and then say this is high or low, therefore it's good or bad. But in total, if you look at a number of these different metrics and put it together in perspective, it should give you a good idea of the performance and the traffic around your website. One last point maybe, measuring these figures. About a decade ago, the so-called free hit counter was very popular. Even today, you can do a search for free web page counter or free hit counter. Basically, companies will give you some code that you have to insert on your web page in exchange for a small advertisement possibly, and you'll get this little figure sitting there which simply increments as people visit the page. They normally were true hit counters, and some of them were page view counters. Some of them even had an ego setting where you can set the start value to 10,000 or something, impressing your clients with a large number of imaginary visits. But currently, a free way to do this, something called Google Analytics, which is the same principle from the Google website. You can get some code which you have to insert on your web page, every web page if you like. Make sure it's hosted, and then every time anybody visits that page, the code will execute and it'll start taking these measurements, send them back to a common interface where you can go in and actually draw graphs for you to show you what the many of these analytics are for that web page and for the website as a whole.